Alright guys, welcome to VALORANT News. Boostio was getting into all sorts of drama in the back end of last season after stepping into that villain role on Evil Geniuses, but he's back at it again before the new season even begins, raising questions as to whether Leo is actually as good on Fnatic as he appears to be at the moment. Leo's been considered for some time now by many in the community one of the, if not the very best player in the entire world. Boostio though says that he's not even the best player on his own team and has plenty of players that he would put above him in his world rankings at the present. Do you guys agree with this perspective in the comment section below? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. A few roster things to get into. Firstly, we've got this though. GTA 6 whatever was confirmed or revealed. It's coming soon. Announcement or revealed trailer coming, I think next month sometime. But that is arriving before the replay system. And as Valor Leaks says, that yeah, kind of unfortunate. Now on the replay system side, it is coming. It was being worked on a few months or weeks back. So still expected next year during the early part of the year. So it's a big talking point that especially like the Chinese version of the game was having a replay system, and the pros, you know, massively want this for, I mean, there's so many positives for it, and it's still massively surprising to me that it hasn't arrived as of yet, and that we now have GTA 6 announced before the replay system has arrived. But yeah, rumor has it that early next year, it's probably going to happen. Gen.G confirming that Munchkin is back in the team. He was, you know, there for some time, but now he's going to be back in for their 2024 iteration of their roster. Also from Flynn, I thought just a nice update here, and wishing Flynn the best for the near term. He, of course, was dominating over the last couple of months with the spreadsheets, right? Looking at where everyone is, and I can imagine that's you know, very time consuming. And as Flynn says, lots of things have been happening lately, need to focus on my career and mental health a little bit. Used to spend 24 hours a day on some of these spreadsheets, don't have that time anymore. So yeah, wishing the best for Flynn, but yeah, probably no spreadsheets for the near term, especially for the tier 2 stuff, which is certainly still unknown at the moment. Now tier 1 stuff though is getting pretty spicy. We believe that NRG are making some moves. The rumor is as of yesterday that on Evil Geniuses they might no longer be playing with Ethan nor Demon 1, which makes you think that maybe a link to NRG could be possible. And as NRG say yesterday, I can't say officially yet, but I really want to. And Chet's like, oh, you know, why would you? What would you possibly be wanting to talk about? And maybe that's because NRG have finally done something, and it might be a pretty big deal at that. Now, Boostio is being linked to 100 Thieves for the new season. It's definitely possible that he goes there. When is another question. If we believe that his contract with EG is up in January, then it's possible that they have to just bide their time, 100 Thieves, with Nature until they can get Boostio in, and then very shortly after that, the season will officially begin. That is the current rumor on what's going to happen there, especially when we saw Stella on Evil Geniuses yesterday, an in-game leader formerly of 100T, and seems plausible enough that Stelio and Boostio could effectively swap, especially if EG are going to go back to their default position of being not the best team in the world, which is very rarely the case. Still can't really believe how they managed to put it off this past season. Demon 1 was a large part of that when he joined, and definitely should be in the conversation for the best player in the world. But over the course of this season, there has been other players that have been thrown into the category as well, especially the Fnatic guys. Going into the World Championship, arguably the top 4 players in the world of the season were the 4 Fnatic guys, excluding unfortunately Boaster. He wasn't too far away, but realistically it was Alpha, Leo, Chronicle and Durka were considered to be maybe the best 4 players in the entire world. Now, how you order those players, which one was the best, is a bit of a question. Some people would say, who really cares, just enjoy the moment, but people want to rank players, you know, they want to see who's the best technically, who's the second best, and it's tricky to say when you've got different roles in play, but Leo was one of the guys that was always coming up at the top of conversations, dominating this year statistically on a role that you wouldn't necessarily expect that to be the case for, but apparently Boostio would. And I mean, look, he was great on Guild a couple of years back. Ever since he's joined Fnatic, he's been pretty much unstoppable, and of course they won the Rebel home ground. Now, it's always tricky when you're looking at the best player of 2023 because you kind of want to give a lot of weighting to the World Championship results. The best player at the World Championship that won the World Championship, they've got to be getting a high rating and a high weighting, I suppose, in this analysis, whereas Fnatic only came top 4 that event. They didn't win. They wanted to win, obviously, right, but they lost to Loud a couple of times, just couldn't get past them in the playoffs when it eventually mattered. So this is where Boostio chimes into the discussion. We remember last year where Boostio was pretty vocal about the Chinese region, saying on a podcast that there's no way that China will ever be better than NA in VALORANT, believing that China, they're too far behind. NA have too much of a head start. The other regions have too much of a head start. China will never be there, and that's why it made a very exciting storylines when EG and Edward Gaming and these teams eventually came to blows in the tournament. And, the Chinese region was not so happy with these statements of Boostio, and he was causing lots of friction with various different teams throughout the season, stepping nicely into that villain-esque role, which worked out pretty well on Evil Geniuses, and of course they ended up winning the World Championship as well. But after the most recent event at the Rebel Homegrounds, Fnatic won it, of course, their third event win of the season. They won 3. Okay, Rebel Homegrounds, not everyone was there, but there were lots of good teams in attendance, to be honest, and, Fnatic went to those 4 tournaments really this year. They won Lock-In, they won Masters, they won the Rebel Homegrounds, but they lost in the Champions, which is a pretty big deal. But as George Geddes says, and many would agree with, Leo, best Valorant player in the world. And a lot of the community has been echoing this sentiment for some time. Boostio, though, says he's not so convinced. Yes, Leo is one of the best players. He's up there. He's not terrible, of course. But as far as Boostio is concerned, the team sets Leo up for success. And he's actually not the best player on his own team. And he looks at players like Aspas and others, Les, for example, and says they're better than Leo is.
I don't think Leo's the best player in the world, no. I don't think so. I think like I said, Fnatic is the best team in the world. They're better than us, but they just played like shit at champs. But I definitely don't think Leo... No, Leo has like the best stats, right? But I think it's his team that enables him to do that. I think just his playstyle enables him to have the best stats. He is one of the best players in the world, right? But he's also enabled on that team to have the best stats. Had these stats on the previous team and carried them? Yeah, like I said, he is still one of the best players in the world. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, in terms of impact for me, I don't think Leo brings as much impact as Alpha and Aspas and Les. I don't think he does. I would rather those other 3 than Leo on my team if I had to make a team. Based? It's not based. I think if you just actually look, if you look at their games and just how his positioning on the map, you'll see why he never dies first. Why his KD is so good. He is the best. He's one of the best players in the world still, but you could definitely there is flaws, I think.
So sure, when we looked at these numbers the other day, most kills in 2023, Leo isn't on here, right? We get other names on here. Dirk is actually the top performer from the Fnatic side, but this doesn't really tell the whole picture, of course. Lots of this is how many series you played, and Loud played lots of series this year because they had some losers bracket runs, whereas Fnatic largely were going through winners a lot of the time. This, for example, the numbers from the Rebel Homegrounds. The numbers, insane. Again, Leo, Chronicle, Dirk, Alpha, they're all here in the top 4, and Leo had a 1.36 rating over the course of the tournament, which is, just far and away above everybody else, really. The gap between Leo and even the next guy in Chronicle is quite considerable, and you see this an awful lot of the time. Leo's numbers, this is just all-time numbers, certainly on the Sova especially, but, look at his all-time rating on these different agents. A 1.3 all-time over almost 2,000 rounds on the Sova is just pretty unbelievable. And even if we look at the last 90 days, the last 60 days, I guess, to be very similar because not many games that have been played. But, we can see, of course, recent results, including the defeated champions, the back-to-back defeats to Loud. But outside of that, they've won basically everything this season. And even going back to the Guild Esports days, series like this, it's not like Leo was having a hard time. Here he is against Optic, 52-30, on a team that's did Trex, Safe, Coldamentor, and Russ set up Leo in the same way that he's getting set up today on Fnatic? Arguably not. Another category to look at here, top-rated initiators, minimum 500 rounds of the season. Leo has a 1.24. Again, far and away better than anybody else in the world. Now, sure, is that partly his team setting him up for success? Does he need to get a lot of first blood engagements? Not necessarily. Is he getting a lot of trade frags? Sure. Is that working from Fnatic? Yes. And it's always difficult to say who, deserves the best credit when you have players that are doing more difficult and easier roles for teams. For example, Ye, when he was on Optic, they were definitely setting him up for success. When he goes to a team where he doesn't have that support, then he struggles a bit more, such as DSG, for example. We'll see how it works with Bleed Esports going forwards. But best player in the world for that season in 2022. But would he have looked like that without his teammates playing in the way they did? No. Would Leo look like that without the way that his teammates are playing for him? Probably not. But is he still, even regardless of that, unbelievably good? Yes. This, for example, was the group stage of champions where Alpha and Leo were right up there at the top of the board again. And this, for example, was the tier list that the guys on Platchet, I believe, did when they averaged things out. I think this was going into the World Championship. They had Leo number 1 by quite some margin, really. Then Durka, then Alpha, Chronicle, Kang, something, Aspas, Forsaken, Team 1, etc., etc. Less is here as well. Boostio is actually P13 here, which is pretty nice to see. But do you think Boostio has a point in terms of other players that are better than Leo? Is he just saying this because it's a little bit controversial? Is Alpha better than Leo? Is Durka better than Leo? I think you can make the argument. I mean, even Chronicle, that entire team is unbelievable. But Leo's consistency is just impeccable, and I think I would lean and give him the benefit of the doubt as being the best player right now, at least the most consistent player in terms of what he does for that Fnatic roster. Yes, is his role maybe easier than his teammates? Sure, maybe it is at times, but even back at the guild days, you could see that some of these numbers he was dropping on teams with less support were still pretty incredible. And the other part of Boostio's analysis is, when he says that, Aspas, right, better than Leo. Sure, I understand that perspective, but it's not like Aspas also doesn't have that same level of teammate support, you know what I mean? All the players that look good are going to be playing in a system that helps them look good. It's the same with Ye, it's the same with Aspas, it's maybe even the same with Less to some degree. The team are set up in a way for Aspas to deliver incredible performances. Is he a great player that's capable of doing that? Yes, but without that same supporting cast, would he look as good? Possibly not. So the analysis that Boostio's using to not discredit Leo, but to say that others are better, I think you can apply his same logic of what he's saying about Leo and say that, well, maybe the same could be true for other players. I think we might see that, like Aspas goes from Loud here to Leviathan. Okay, that team on paper is also disgusting, but we'll see. I mean, how's it going to go? Is Aspas going to look as good on Leviathan as he did on Loud? That's a big question. Frankly, it's not a question we really have to think about with Fnatic because they are not making a change. And this I thought was pretty cool as well, that TenZ actually is topping the leaderboard this season on average duration flashed. So as in the most difficult players to flash, the players that either turn away the quickest or avoid flashes the best. And on average, despite being flashed 164 times, TenZ was only blind for 0.56 of a second, considerably lower than anybody else, which is kind of impressive. It's does it mean TenZ is the GOAT? Not necessarily, but it's kind of an interesting stat nonetheless. So very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Just to look at some numbers here from the Sentinels Invitational, they just topped 100,000 viewers actually on that day 1 game against MXS when the rematch was going through. And on the final day, the numbers weren't so insane. I'm pretty sure Red Bull Homegrounds was beginning at around about a similar time, but nonetheless, an important result for Sentinels to get the W, to gain some confidence going into the new year. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.